However, I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with the court the details of the crime, as so far you've only had an opportunity to review the affidavit and a few facts here and there that have been offered to the court in the motions and pleadings that have been filed. The questions that have screamed out to anyone who will listen since August 13th of 2018 are why and how. Why did this have to happen? How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family? For what? These are the questions that only one individual in this courtroom or on this planet knows the answers to. I fully expect we will not receive the answers to these questions today, nor will we at any point in the future. I don't expect that he will ever tell the truth about what truly happened or why. Even if he did, there is no rational way that any human being could find those answers acceptable responses to such horrific questions. The best we can do is try to piece together some kind of understanding from the evidence that is available to us. And the evidence tells us this: the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. Not in a fit of rage, not by way of accident, but in a calculated and sickening manner. Shanann was 34 years old.
As it relates to Celeste, to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory.
Chris Watts, the man whose name now conjures images of a horror that unfolded in a seemingly idyllic Colorado family home, lives out his days far removed from the freedom he once knew. His transition from a family man to a notorious inmate began in August 2018, when he was arrested for the murder of his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste. The details of his crimes are the stuff of nightmares, involving deceit, infidelity, and a cold-blooded willingness to erase his family for a fresh start with his mistress. Watts pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, a move that spared him the executioner but condemned him to a lifetime behind bars, where the shadow of his actions looms large. How is he now? Well, that is a common question. I've not been able to get an interview to get the words directly from the monster's mouth. But there are things that I do know about being confined in prisons. There are lots of research on this, and here are a few things that come to mind. Doctoral research in the field of psychology and criminology offers valuable insights into the effects of long-term confinement on inmates. Studies such as those by Craig Haney, a psychologist known for his research on solitary confinement and its psychological impacts, highlight the profound effects of prison environments on inmate behavior, mental health, and prospects for rehabilitation. Another significant area of research is the work by Doris Layton McKenzie, who has extensively studied correctional rehabilitation programs. Her findings suggest that while certain programs can reduce recidivism and support inmate rehabilitation, the success of these initiatives heavily depends on their implementation, the nature of the prison environment, and the individual inmate's engagement with the program. This research underscores the complexity of rehabilitation within the prison system, highlighting the need for tailored evidence-based approaches. Applying these research insights to Chris Watts' situation, it's possible to infer the psychological toll that long-term confinement might take. Given the nature of his crimes and the resulting public and inmate animosity, Watts is likely subjected to heightened levels of stress and isolation. factors known to contribute to deteriorating mental health. The prison environment, with its inherent restrictions and lack of autonomy, could exacerbate feelings of remorse, guilt, or denial, complicating any potential for psychological rehabilitation. Moreover, the effectiveness of rehabilitation programs Watts might have access to is contingent on several factors, as highlighted by McKinsey's research. The quality and consistency of psychological counseling, educational opportunities, and any form of therapeutic intervention play critical roles in determining whether Watts or any inmate in similar circumstances can embark on a path toward genuine rehabilitation. However, the success of such programs also requires a personal commitment to change, a factor that remains deeply personal and variable. The doctoral studies and research on the psychological impacts of long-term confinement provide a sobering context for understanding the life of Chris Watts in prison. The isolation, stress, and monotony of prison life are likely impacting him in ways that only compound the gravity of his actions. While research suggests that rehabilitation is possible, it is a complex and nuanced process, heavily dependent on individual willingness, the nature of the crime, and the quality of the rehabilitation programs available. For Watts, the path to rehabilitation, if it exists, is fraught with challenges. The enormity of his crimes casts a long shadow, making any discussion of rehabilitation controversial and complex. While the suffering he experiences in confinement can never compensate for the lives he took, it serves as a constant reminder of the consequences of his actions. The doctoral studies underscore a critical point. Confinement changes individuals, but whether it makes them better or worse is a question without a straightforward answer. In Watts' case, the hope for rehabilitation is overshadowed by the magnitude of his crimes, leaving society to grapple with the difficult questions about punishment, redemption, and the possibility of change in the face of unfathomable tragedy. The studies remind us that while confinement is a punishment, its effects on the human psyche are profound and multifaceted, offering no easy resolutions to the questions of justice and rehabilitation in cases as heinous as that of Chris Watts. Dear Sharon, hello again. I hope you're doing well. I think that Wisconsin weather can compare to Colorado's weather, and it can vary so much from one day to another. I think spring hit for a week, then summer for a day, and now it's been a mixture of fall/winter the last few days. I would say I'd rather be cold than hot, especially in this little shoebox I'm in. Okay, let me start right into the Weld County Jail experience. I arrive at the Weld County Jail the night of August 15th. I get booked, fingerprinted, and my picture taken and then escorted by a deputy and 2 technical officers to the unit I'm staying in. One of the officers, as he's slamming my door shut, says good luck. I'm standing there alone in the darkness. The only light was that of a dim nightlight used for guards to check on you. I'm standing there wondering is this my normal for the rest of my life? I lay down in the bunk in my turtle suite as I'm in their suicide watch pod and just stare off into the darkness. Nothing is adding up, and it feels like none of this can be real. To my astonishment, I look in the front corner of my cell and see 2 dark figures standing there. I thought, okay, this is my eyes playing tricks on me. So I close them and open my eyes again, and yet they are still there. As I focus more intently, I can see one is male and one is female. The male is in a black suit and the female is in a black dress with a Victorian-style hat. Both their wardrobes looked vintage. Their faces were ash-colored and almost familiar, until the familiar feeling turned into a sure thing. This was my grandfather and grandmother on my mom's side, their faces being unmistakable now. I almost want to move closer to them when their eyes opened in unison. They motioned me towards them, but I was frozen and knew I didn't want to go towards them. Their eyes were as red as blood, crimson. This eerie feeling came over me as I had 4 eyes staring back at me, as if piercing my soul in a bad way. The only problem was, I felt like I was in a trance and had to keep eye contact. Somehow, they would not let my eyes move off of them. I felt like I needed to go over to them, as the one motioned his hand for me to come near, but all of a sudden something broke the trance. I looked away and looked back, and the corner of my cell was empty. The pair was gone. I obviously couldn't sleep much after this event, thinking this type of visit would only get worse if I let my guard down. I knew without any doubt this was part of what was inside of me. It completely freaked me out. I realized I did have a demon inside of me. Now, what was I going to do? I stayed on this unit for a week until I was moved to restrictive housing unit, or the hole. The suicide unit was quiet, but I soon learned the hole was not the same. As soon as I entered the unit, the screams and shouts pierced my soul. Out of the 20 cells, I'm sure 90% of them were screaming at me, and the barraging remarks raged from "I'm going to rip your face off," to "kill yourself," to "I'm going to fuck your wife in the afterlife." All of these comments felt like daggers hitting my heart. This went on for weeks, and I finally drew the conclusion that this must be what hell feels like. The screams, the pounding on the walls had to stop at some point, right? They eventually did, either by them losing interest or the fact I wasn't responding to anything they said. It was like restless animals at the zoo. If your head isn't messed up going into the hole, it will be coming out. During this time is when I started reading the Bible. I didn't know if I should even pick the Bible up, because I thought I was too far gone because of what I had done. I was lost, broken, and I even listened to the other inmates informing me the different ways I could kill myself while in my cell. Their words were, "If you don't do it yourself, we will do it for you. We'd be glad to." With these thoughts flowing through my head, I didn't God could forgive me for what I'd done. But I picked up the Bible and started reading because there had to be a message in this book that could help me persevere. I finished the Bible in about 2 weeks. Some days were harder to concentrate than others due to the noise in the pod and the horrible letters that were flooding in. Not all of the letters were terrible. There were a few that had encouraging messages and even pointed out scriptures in the Bible for me to commit to memory. These Bible verses showed the mercy and loving kindness of God. After about 5 weeks in the hole, I was moved into the ERS pod to give me a little extra movement. My attorney team would come to visit me 3-4 times a week, and I can't thank them enough. They were my only human contact. They treated me not like a client, but like a friend. They didn't treat me with hostility, but with compassion, and would be there in a moment's notice if I was struggling with something. On November 5, my attorney team flew my mom, dad, and sister out to talk to me via video monitor because the next day I was going to plead guilty to all charges against me. I got to spend 30 minutes with each member of my family individually. The letter continues, and there are more letters much like this one that he tried to publish, but it was mostly plagiarized. So to me, it feels more like an act than reality. I can't speak for God, though, but I do believe some things are unforgivable. But that is just my thoughts. I've always been appalled by murder and violent crimes, but when it involves children, I am even more disgusted. I can almost imagine the fear going through the mind of those children when their father attacked. It's revolting. Maybe God can forgive such things.
You don't want to say hi? Careful, Cece, there's a table there.
Daddy?
She is a hot mess. You have to take a leap of faith in yourself. No matter what it is in life, like take that.
In Chris Watts's case, it probably doesn't hurt to hope. Share your thoughts in the comments. Also, has anyone found his ex-girlfriend? That's all for Deliberately Deadly today.